Hello and good morning. I'm going to go ahead and lecture this morning on a few artists. We're going to start with an artist from Nigeria named Anachiwe. He is very interesting in the fact that he combines a lot of different qualities in terms of time. His work is actually shown at the Metropolitan Museum in both, it's right here. So his work is shown in both the Metropolitan Museum in the classic African section and also in the contemporary art section. And this shows that his work both has a deep cultural impact, and it also, it's also very contemporary. He was kind of brought up in the 70s in a very kind of more hip, contemporary sort of group of artists. And you can see it in his work. So let's talk about the work for a second. So this is from 2003. It's aluminum liquor bottle caps and copper wire. So what it is if you see up here, it's the tops of liquor bottles, and they're kind of joined together by these tiny pieces of copper wire. I've actually seen this piece at the Harm Museum in Florida, where I went to graduate school. It's very cool. It hangs on the wall, but it has like a structure behind it that pushes it out to kind of make it look like it's kind of wrinkled and it's kind of like cloth-like, but yet it's made out of metal. And the components are really important. They kind of reflect Nigeria and African history. So he uses the bottle caps for the main purpose of is that it's one of the sort of big sort of beginnings of trade with Africa from the European countries, and that was used as a currency in the slave trade with the sort of distribution of alcohol. Also, he uses a lot of the Nigerian contemporary sort of patterns in his work that reference Africa and his culture and his tribe. We can kind of see it here with these like little sections of red, and it has a very African feel. You'll remember by looking back at our African section. What makes him so interesting is that he's very, very influential and famous for our times as an artist, and it's really interesting that he both has a place in the sort of classic African art and tribal art, if you will, and also in contemporary art, showing alongside of a lot of these other artists that we're looking at. So he's really good. I like his work a lot. There's a lot of debate, like, is it a sculpture, is it a painting? It hangs on the wall, but it has dimension. I think it kind of spans a lot of different genres. So that'll do it for that. Let's see here. Okay, so that's my synthesizer. Pretty cool, huh? This is Ai Weiwei. We looked at this work in particular in a video that we watched, so I won't spend too much time on him. He's a Chinese artist. He's very controversial. He's a social political artist. His sunflower seed, remember that it has this sort of place in China where he has them all manufactured by hand. They're made out of porcelain. They're hand painted. There are millions of them. They both reference, the sort of oppression of the Communist Party under Mao in the revolution. They also represent sort of capitalism, and how America and other countries depend on Chinese labor to create products and things like that. Ai Weiwei is really interesting. I highly suggest you go online and check out some of the videos. There's a lot of videos of his performance art. He's mainly sort of known as a performance artist, but he does a lot of different sorts of things. Let me make sure the camera is okay here. Okay, let me correct it a little bit. Sorry, it's on like a stick. here. There we go. Okay. So that's Ai Weiwei. There he is right there. Now let's look at Nam Jung Paik. He is a very interesting artist. He's also Chinese, but he was really prominent. He kind of really became famous in the 90s, but he worked through the 80s. He's a member of what we call the Fluxist movement. Now, the Fluxists are very hard to explain, just like Dada is very hard to explain. But the only way I can kind of explain the Fluxists simply is that they, as the Dada, were interested in changing society, right? The idea that war got us into, logic got us into war. The Fluxists are more interested in reforming and changing art itself. So there's a kind of a paradigm shift here from a societal sort of, critique to a more critique on art itself. So Pike asks a lot of like, what is art? What can art be? And he's very, very heavily entrenched in the sort of avant-garde in Europe in the 70s. He does a lot of performance pieces. One of his famous performance pieces is where he smashes a violin, right? He also drags a violin behind him on a rope. He's an incredibly intelligent individual. He is a classically trained musician, but instead he uses music, he uses notes, and eventually he uses TV. And one of the most important things is he's known as the first video artist. And so let's talk about the piece we're concerned with here, which is his mixed media piece, Electric Superhighway. So what this is it's got neon lights, it's full of televisions, all like the old style televisions that probably none of you have ever seen before. They're quite big, they're really square and chunky. Maybe you've seen one at your grandma or grandpa's house. And each state you see in here is showing a video of something that is emblematic for that state or that identifies that state in particular. So Texas has something, and Louisiana would have something, and I've never seen this piece before, and California has stuff, and so he's really, this piece is really interested in sort of the identity of America and communication, and he was really big on communication and what is art, what can art be. He really had a hard time. His first solo exhibition was in Prague, where he went to a slaughterhouse and got like a severed bull's head and hung it by a doorway, and then he played like, I don't know, like some kind of death drone music or something, and it really didn't go over well with the Europeans. He was really, he didn't really have a lot of success or acknowledgement until the 1990s, but he is really, one of the quintessential keystones to performance art. We're going to be taking a look at and talking about performance art. It's something we haven't really interfaced yet with. It's very weird. It's very hard to understand and explain. I like a lot of it. Some of it I don't like. I think we'll be looking at an artist named Chris Burden, who's one of my favorite performance artists. But his performance art actually does make a lot of sense. But God, the Fluxists are all over the place. Their movement was very hard, very confusing to understand, very avant-garde. It's still like sort of very deeply crouched inside of Dada, but like I said, it's not a critique of society and of government and of people. It's more of a critique of art itself, of that the art world has become so codependent on a language, right? And the language vis-a-vis drawing, painting, sculpture, these sese vocabularies that we've been looking at and learning, that a guy like Pike comes along and says, well, you know, I don't think that you have to be defined by this language to make a great piece of art. And that's where he really shines. So that is that. That's Electronic Superhighway. So we're going to take a look at another painting. Alright, right here. So, this is Emily Cami. I can't say her last name. She's an Aborigine from Australia. She is very cool, very interesting painter. She started to paint when she was in her 80s. She's around 85 when this is made, in 1994. And if you look at the painting, which this is a horrible slide, I bet this is her down here painting it, and this is a little shot to give you some scale of how big it is. She kind of works in a very tribal, sort of very Aboriginal style, right? Like some of the Aboriginal cave paintings we looked at in the beginning of the year, this is where all of this is sort of tying in. But then she's introduced to modern paints and to color, and she creates these paintings that are just phenomenal, just beautiful abstract paintings of, this one's called Earth's Creation, and you can see it has this dabbing, which would remind us of, what does this remind us of? Anyone? Huh? Anyone want to respond to that in class? Oh, okay, so I'll just, it's the Impressionists, right? It's very Impressionist, and that's so weird, right? That we have this primitive Aboriginal woman who is very much a major player in her tribe and in the ideas of her culture and mysticism, making these paintings and using these colors. She does paintings where she either describe it as a summer painting or the dry season or the spring paintings. So this is one that they range from super vibrant colors to very, very like stark reds and things like that. But overall, just wonderful. But I mean, the idea here is just to remember that art can sort of come from anywhere at any time and translate into something that's absolutely, beautiful, such as Earth's creation. So that'll do it for today. I hope everybody is doing well. I want to keep these short and we'll keep them coming. Yep. All right. Signing off.